enter this segment, there's a couple terms I want to quantify so that we're all on the same page. The first one is employer branding. Your employer brand is the public's perception of your organization as an employer. It's very different from your consumer brand. That's your products and your services and your market reputation as a supplier. But your role as an employer speaks to your candidate audience, and that's very, very different. And then talent attraction is a relatively new term because we've always thought in terms of recruiting. Recruiting talent and attracting talent are extremely different. Think about in marketing, you have push and pull marketing. Pushing is sending information out. It's sometimes called disruptive because you're sending messages into people's personal space to get their attention. They're sometimes distractions, they're irritants. That's pushing information out to your audience. Pulling people in is creating content and information and brand awareness that makes people attracted to your company, your product, or your service. So when we apply that same marketing concept to a talent model, there's a huge difference between recruiting, where we're reaching out and trying to grab people, get their attention, and convince them to come work for us, versus attracting talent, where people want to get in. And organizations that attract talent usually have the pick of the litter. They don't have a problem attracting high-performing people, and they have the choice of people that they want. Unfortunately, that's not the situation with the vast majority of companies. In most scenarios, what we have is a situation where we hire the most qualified person who applies for a job. And so this leads to our biggest talent acquisition problem. When we post a job, we usually have the post and pray method. We post the role and pray that we get somebody good apply. And in recruiting, we sometimes rank people based on our assessment of their background, skills, and experience. We might say someone is a 7 or an 8 or a 9 for a specific position based on what they're bringing to the table, their salary requirements, and so on. So when we plot all of the candidates on a chart, we can see that when we have the most qualified candidate who wants the least salary, they suddenly become the most attractive person in the candidate pool. And recruiting has operated this way for decades. Unfortunately, if you have no high performers apply for the job, you're looking at a limited candidate pool. For example, if all of your applicants are 6s, 7s, 7s look good because relative to peers, they're the best available. So we end up selecting a candidate for a new hire based on least objectionable choice, not necessarily overall qualifications. But if we expand the candidate pool and we begin to get high performers apply for the role, we get 8s and 9s and 10s. And I would argue that a 10 for a position is not 10% better than a 9. A 10 is somebody whose orders of magnitude, like on the Richter scale, they are significantly better. These are people that come in with prior skills and experience, knowledge, industry, domain information, and they're able to hit the ground running. They bring to the table more than what's expected. When you have a chance to hire those kinds of people, it's a game changer. Unfortunately, our talent acquisition problem is that we frequently don't have high performers in the candidate pool. And the reason why is very simple. They're not attracted to our company. So the net result is we have increased cost of recruiting because we're constantly trying to convince and bring people in. And then we also have cost of poor talent. That's when we are successfully able to fill a role, our recruiting metrics might look great. Cost to fill, speed to fill, all these things that recruiting is typically measured on may be green. However, the long-term consequences to the business are significant because you've now gotten people in the door who need training, they need development, they don't have the soft skills, they may not be a strong cultural fit, and the impact is significant. Well, we see this in many different ways. When we do an evaluation of an operational environment, we see total cost of operations increasing. There's quality issues, poor satisfaction on the part of customers, safety risk, legal risk, all kinds of things as a result of hiring people who are not engaged. They don't have the expected skill sets. They don't have the soft skills, or they're not a cultural fit. High vacancy rate and turnover just exacerbates the problem. But I would argue that the biggest impact on the business is not all of those operational metrics. Yes, having turnover that's excessive is terribly expensive. Having workers' compensation claims or unemployment insurance rate increases, massive impact. And unfortunately, those things are not often connected to the inefficiency or ineffectiveness of recruiting. But the biggest impact, I believe, is on the leadership team. Because when you have a culture and an environment like this, the impact on the leader is multiple. For example, they just don't have the capacity to achieve their own potential and make the strongest possible contributions because they're getting pulled into the weeds. You see supervisors and director level and managers in this scenario all the time, where they're being sucked down to address issues, fix people's problems, drive rework, manage issues with the customer. I've heard it said in my past that if you're in management, you're in the sausage making business. You're in that ugly part of the organization where all you're doing is firefighting and dealing with issues that are created by staff level people. Well, that's not the right way to run a high performing organization. So the impact on the leadership team also becomes personal. If you're in a leadership role or a middle-level management role, you know that you don't have the time or the capacity to focus on more important issues. Significant opportunities sometimes go by the wayside. Your ability to make stronger contributions is compromised, and your personal achievement and your personal rewards are also impacted by that. And this spills over into your personal life beyond just the financial and professional environment. For example, I've seen many times where leaders can't get a free weekend or they can't get a vacation. Their time is with their family is even interrupted because they're constantly being pulled into firefighting. So there's financial consequences, there's personal and professional consequences. It's significant. So there is a solution to all this, and I call it the Fortune 500 solution because from our experience, what we've seen is that the early adopters of the talent attraction model have been the large corporations that have had millions of dollars to invest in people and resources to be able to figure out how to create an environment that's attractive to their target candidate audience. And so I have a graphic I use that shows your core values are who you are on the inside. Now, beyond that, you have your internal brand, which all of your employees know what it's like to work in your company. And you have the external perception, that external brand, and your vendors, external third-party candidates and customers, investors, they all see this version of your organization. And if there's lack of integrity between your stated core values, your internal culture, and your external brand, then there's going to be evidence of that disconnect all over the place. And we see that now publicly on the internet. So when we look at the information that's available, candidates that are considering your company as an employer, they have the ability to see everything. They see employee stories, they see employee messages and comments on environments like Glassdoor and Indeed. They see what's on your website. I don't know how many times they see companies that say people are our greatest asset. Yet when you look at their website, there is nothing that speaks to the candidate or the WIFM, what I call the what's in it for me. You know, you've heard that radio station that everybody listens to, WIIFM, what's in it for me. Well, the candidate has a WIFM, and that is, what are they going to get from coming to work for you? And even though we say people are our greatest asset, very rarely do we ever speak to what those issues are. And so candidates see this. They see your mission, your vision, your value statements, your core values. They can see all that on the web. They can see information on third-party sites, publications, third-party comment, expert commentary. All this is out there. So what the Fortune 500 solution is to assess all of that noise and make sure that we are able to speak to what we want to create and not let it organically be created for us. Because every organization has a culture and a reputation. Either they created it intentionally or it organically grew from not being under control. And if it grows organically, it's probably not going to grow well. It's not going to be positive or a positive reflection of the company. So when we look at the candidate experience, we see that before they even apply for a job with your company, they're going to probably be introduced to a job from the corporate website or maybe an email, a third-party job board, a personal reach out from a recruiter, something. And they're going to immediately look at the job posting, maybe go to the careers portal on your website, look at the company website. And if they don't see something that excites them, they're not going to get involved. They're going to disengage from the process immediately. And that's the majority of candidates. They're also going to, if they have an interest, look at maybe leadership information, other stuff on the website. They may look for employee stories or information on third-party sites like on Glassdoor or Indeed. And that creates social proof. If they don't see that, then again, they disengage. If they're still interested, they may look at more detailed information on your website, things like your mission and vision, any types of value statement, anything that helps them understand the essence of your brand and your company. Anything that indicates the leadership style or the type of leaders that you have. All that becomes important. And a candidate may not follow that entire sequence in the exact same order all the time, but we know from candidate behavior that they look at all this stuff. Frequently, sometimes they'll apply for a job and then they'll start to take it more seriously later if they're contacted by the business. But they will touch all these points. And what they're doing is they're making a go, no-go decision. And that is, do I want to go forward with applying and going through the process? Or no, is it really not something I'm interested in because they saw something that spooked them? Again, the Fortune 500 solution is being able to control all of the candidate messaging and communication and create a candidate experience that resonates with the right person. And one of the things that we see all the time is that the candidate phase of the journey is really just the start. After a candidate decides they are going to apply for a job, they become an applicant. And that begins a whole new part of a cycle. And as an applicant, they get exposed to other things. And then if they agree to accept a job offer, they become what we call a contingent new hire. And that begins a whole new cycle. And they get exposed to all kinds of other stuff in that loop. And then if they come on board, they show up on day one. And we all know what it's like to give an offer to somebody and they don't show up on day one. The new hire process begins another loop of activity. And at any point in time, if they see something that, again, spooks them, they become disengaged. I would say that you do not have talent on board your company until they have gone through the 30, 60, 90, or even 6-month process, because we know that the process of forming, storming, norming, and performing takes time. And to integrate new people into the team and to get them high performing takes time and investment. So at any point in time when you lose that person, it's a failure. So when we look at how to actually control this and make your organization attractive to the right type of people, there's 5 things that we've seen must happen to make it successful. I call these critical shifts because they're almost more like paradigm shifts. They're not necessarily tactical strategies. They impact the execution of strategy, but they are paradigm shifts. The first one is what we call experiential constancy. That means the experience of the candidate is constant and consistent through that entire talent supply chain. So they get treated respectfully, properly, in an authentic way, all the way through. And when that happens, it's glorious for the right candidate. The second shift is what we call two-way authentic communication. And this is powerfully differentiating in the marketplace. And candidates recognize this immediately. When you move from talking to them or just asking questions to verify their availability and their qualifications, that's a one-way conversation. But when you create authentic communication that's two-way, you're giving information, you're being transparent, it's completely different. And that deeply resonates with the right people. And that's not the standard operating model for most organizations. I would say 85% of organizations don't do any of these things. The third shift is what we call our secret weapon, and that is candidate persona marketing. In the marketing world, sales and marketing people already understand this. They have an avatar or an ideal profile of their perfect customer. They know what they watch, what they read, what they drink, what's important to them, what are their fears, what keeps them up at night. And when you have that level of intimate knowledge with your target candidate in the same way, it's powerful. You can speak to what's important to them, their needs, their goals, their desires, what they're hungry for. It's kind of like sometimes I'll use dating and marriage as a metaphor for this, because you know when you meet somebody that interests you, you may be compatible because you have similar interests and values, but chemistry takes it off the chart. If you have compatibility and chemistry, now you really have something amazing. That chemistry is hard to define, but you know it when you see it. You know it when you feel it. And in the corporate environment, we sometimes call this cultural fit. It's just chemistry. It's this person fits with us. They're like us. They think and feel and they want the same things. They're hungry. So candidate persona marketing is so powerful that it's almost can be construed as manipulative. But when it's done with integrity, it absolutely brings the most effective, high-performing people into the organization that you can imagine. The fourth shift is control and containment. This is primarily understanding that all this stuff that's being published in the public sphere needs to be monitored, managed, controlled, and contained. Otherwise, when it gets out of control, you no longer have a controlled brand. You have something that's out of control. And then finally, leveraging the right expertise is the last shift. A lot of organizations make the mistake of thinking that their internal team can implement these changes. And we've never seen that effective because there's too many dynamics. You have the consumer brand, you have the employer brand, the talent brand, and the culture brand, and they have to be in alignment. And it affects all of the different interactions with the candidate. And so there's very rarely anybody in talent acquisition or benefits or HR that has the ability to influence all this properly. So getting the right expertise to assist in the implementation of this type of talent attraction model is critical. So what we've covered is that there's a problem. It shows up in a lot of different ways. There's metrics everywhere, usually in an organization that has a talent acquisition problem. There is a solution, and large companies have already led the charge in helping develop some of the strategies that we use today. Essentially, if we boil it all down, there's 5 critical shifts that need to be implemented, and we understand what those are, but they're more paradigm shifts that then affect how you approach everything else. And the business return on investment, when this is executed well, is extraordinary because high performers bring all kinds of additional benefits. Almost immediately after making these adjustments to your organization, you're going to see very highly engaged candidates, much more high-performing candidates. You're going to see a decrease in the total cost of operations and recruiting. High-performing people also come in and they up the bar on the rest of your team. And that's wonderful to be able to see. There's also people that come in that make higher level contributions than just doing their job. And that's tremendously greater value to the business. And there's other returns that are produced for the organization as well. So when we get engaged, what we do is we follow a very well-defined process. It's a consultative approach to, first of all, determining suitability and then identifying what are the priorities in the business. And then we help confirm a business case, and then define scope of work. And from there, we proceed with steps. Now, you have a copy of these notes, the copy of the deck available. So I'm not going to go into all of the detail, but I want you to know that whether you're using our organization or some other organization to help you through this journey, there is a well-defined process that should be followed to produce the outcomes you're looking for. So when we're involved, we actually have quite a number of deliverables because we're wanting to have an impact on the entire candidate experience. So that means the job descriptions, the total rewards, and how benefits are communicated. Even the emails that are sent to people, either they look automated and impersonal, or they have a feel to them that makes people feel important. So it affects the entire journey of the candidate, and all of those are part of what we adopt and fix and improve. So one of the final comments I'd like to make is that there's a critical timing opportunity with all of this, because what we're seeing is that probably only about 13 to 15% of companies today have really adopted a talent attraction model, which is amazing for clients that we work with and other organizations that are doing this, because they have such a powerful competitive advantage against all of the other organizations that are fighting for the same people. So we're still what we are calling an early adopter phase, and that's a reference specifically to a IT concept. It's a book called Crossing the Chasm that says that everything that's adopted and penetrates the marketplace follows an S-curve pattern of adoption. And once 10% of people or businesses adopt a solution, it rapidly explodes to 90% adoption in the same period of time. So what we're looking at now is we're at a point of inflection where more organizations are starting to understand the critical difference between recruiting talent and attracting talent. And for the folks that implement this first, they get extraordinary advantage before the rest of the world wakes up. So what we've covered now is that we have a defined process that we use, and it is the same type of consultative process that should be used in any organization that implements transformation like this. We have very defined deliverables because we know what is important to the candidate and what is going to impact their experience. Your commitments, regardless of what you choose to do, you need an internal change champion. You need an executive level person that sponsors and says, we are supportive of this. We want to make this happen. You've got to have a commitment to the journey because it takes time. There also needs to be internal staff in HR and recruiting and benefits and marketing that buy in. They've got to be coachable and understand that this is all being done for the benefit of the organization. And if they have a chance to participate on this journey, it just makes them more valuable. And we're not looking back, we're looking forward. We're not looking at the kind of business we were looking at the kind of business we want to become. So the focus is always on the future. And we also have other things that we do because sometimes we're engaged with clients that have a need for staffing solutions or reputation monitoring, sometimes website development or career portal creation and hosting. So we have a whole variety of solutions in place. So in conclusion, I would just call your attention to one of the final pages that has a list of additional resources. One of the things that's available is a webinar that we produced that covers in detail the 5 shifts that are so critical to building a model like this. That webinar is full of case examples and specific details. So if this interests you, you can find that link and go explore that in greater depth. Or if based on what you've seen today, you're interested in getting more information from us directly, you can set up a call with one of our team members and proceed that way. And of course, we have a lot of thought leadership and white papers, free resources on our website. So with that, I will turn it over